I found the note on a Tuesday morning, under my coffee cup, in her handwriting. 4 words on the back of a post-it. No signature. She didn't need one. I knew her handwriting the way you know the handwriting of someone who has been leaving corrections on your work for 3 years. Precise, slightly forward-leaning. The letters of a person who means exactly what they write. I lied. I don't hate you. I read it twice. Then I sat down. The project was finished. The deadline had passed at midnight. We had spent 11 days in the same open plan office after everyone else had gone home, across a table from each other, working on the thing we had both wanted, and neither of us had gotten alone. I had assumed, when I finally left at 2 in the morning, that we were done, that we would go back to what we were. The note suggested we were not going back to what we were. I was, I discovered, completely fine with that. My name is Marcus Vane. I'm 35. I'm a brand strategist at a mid-sized agency called Tilbrook. The kind of place that's good enough to be proud of and scrappy enough that everyone pulls too many directions at once. I like the work. I like the particular satisfaction of finding the right frame for something that hasn't been framed yet. I have been told I am competitive. I prefer to say I care about getting things right, which is the same thing with better optics. Her name was Iris Calloway. She was 33. She was the other senior strategist at Tilbrook, the one who had joined 8 months before I had, who had a way of presenting ideas that made the room lean forward, who kept a small ceramic cactus on her desk that had survived 2 office moves and several rounds of hot desking, and had therefore earned its place. She had dark red hair that she pulled back when she was thinking hard, and let down when the thinking was done, and a way of disagree with you that felt like being corrected by someone who'd read more than you had. She was, in summary, the most professionally irritating person I had ever respected, without wanting to admit it. We had met on her 2nd week. I had walked into a client debrief to find her already there, already with notes, already with a framework on the whiteboard that was close enough to the one I'd spent the previous evening building that I had stood in the doorway for a moment, recalibrating. She'd looked up. I'd said, "Nice framework." She'd said, "I know." We had been rivals ever since, cordially, professionally, with the specific care of 2 people who understand the rules of the game they're playing and choose to play it cleanly. We were not unfriendly. We had coffee from the same kitchen, made small talk in the same lift, and had once, at a team event that went later than planned, ended up in the same conversation for 2 hours, and found it the most intellectually alive 2 hours either of us had spent at a work function. We did not mention it afterward. We returned to the regular arrangement. The thing I told myself was that what I felt, when she pushed back on something I'd proposed, was the particular friction of being challenged by someone worth challenging. That the extra hour I sometimes put in on a pitch, when I knew she was pitching the same client, was professional pride. That the way I noticed when she walked into a room was competitive awareness. That the 2 hours at the team event were an anomaly, not a data point. I had been telling myself this for 3 years. I had, it turns out, been telling myself a lot of things. The first time quality control failed me was about 18 months in. There was a pitch, a hospitality client, a good brief, the kind of thing both of us had independently developed a strong angle on. We'd both gone in, we'd both presented. The client had chosen hers, which was a clean and correct decision that I arrived at approximately 2 weeks after it happened, when I'd stopped being annoyed enough to see it clearly. What I'd been annoyed about, if I was honest, was not losing the pitch. It was watching her present it, the way she structured the argument, the way she read the room and adjusted without breaking stride, and having to sit with the specific complicated feeling of thinking, "That is exactly right, and I wish I had been the one to say it," and I wish I had not just thought either of those things in that order. I filed it under competitive frustration. Moved on. Built a better pitch for the next one. The second time was about a year ago, an after-work event, a collective birthday for 3 people on the team, a bar that was louder than necessary. I was talking to someone from accounts when I noticed Iris across the room, talking to someone I didn't recognize. A man, not from Tilbrook, someone's friend or +1. He was leaning in the way people lean when they're trying to get closer to a conversation without being obvious about it. She was nodding at something he said. Then she looked up, across the room, found me, not searching, just looked up, and I was where she looked, and her expression didn't change, but she held it for a second, and then looked back. I turned back to the person from accounts. I said something relevant. I had no memory of what it was. Later, outside, waiting for a cab that was taking too long, she said, "Who were you talking to for so long?" I said, "Accounts." "Who was the man?" She said, "Someone's +1." I said, "He was leaning in." She looked at me. "Was he?" she said, in a tone that was not a question about whether I'd noticed. I said, "Yes." She said, "I know." Neither of us said anything else for a moment. The cab arrived. We went in separate directions. I sat in the back of mine and thought about the fact that she'd looked up and found me without looking for me, and what that meant, and then I told myself it meant nothing and went home. That was the version of the story I'd been living in. 3 years of misfilings. 3 years of calling something by the wrong name because the right name required a decision I hadn't made yet. Then came the Ashford account. Then came 11 days. The project was called the Ashford account. A heritage retail brand trying to figure out what it was for in the next decade. The kind of brief that sounds elegant and turns into something vast and sprawling the moment you open it. Our creative director, unable to choose between our 2 competing strategic proposals, had done what creative directors do when they can't choose. He'd told us to combine them. Iris and I had received this news in a meeting room, side by side, and had looked at each other with a specific expression of 2 people who had just been told to share a bedroom on a family holiday. "Fine," she said. "Fine," I said. That was the beginning of 11 days. The office cleared out by 7 most evenings. By 8 it was usually just us. The open plan floor went quiet in a particular way. The HESVAC hum, the ambient city noise through the glass, the blue light of 2 monitors on either side of the project table. She brought a thermos of tea every night. I brought a bag of those mixed nuts she'd once mentioned she found annoying because they were always mostly cashews. I replaced the mix with one that was half almonds. She noticed on day 3 and didn't say anything. She ate the almonds. I had poor survival instincts around Callaway women. This was becoming clear. The work was good. This was the thing that complicated everything. The work was genuinely better for having both of us on it. Her instinct for consumer psychology and my instinct for brand narrative were doing something together that neither of us would have produced separately, and we both knew it, and we kept not saying it, because saying it would have required admitting something that neither of us had the vocabulary for yet. On day 5, she pushed back on a positioning line I'd written. She said it was too safe. I said it was earned. She said earning it wasn't the point if it didn't move anyone. I said, "What do you want it to do? Make them cry?" She said, "Yes, actually, that would be ideal." I rewrote it. She read the new version without comment for a long moment. Then she said, "That's better." That sentence did something to me I was not prepared for in a professional context. I went back to my screen and did not examine it. On day 6, she found an error in a consumer insight I'd pulled from secondary research. a sample-size issue that would have undermined the whole section. She didn't send it over as a tracked comment. She walked around the table and pointed at my screen and said, "There," and explained it, standing behind my chair, close enough that I could see the reflection of the screen in her glasses. She explained it once, clearly, without any implication that I was an idiot for missing it, which was not the mode she reserved for professional disagreements, and which I therefore filed as something different. I said, "Good catch." She said, "That's why there are two of us." She went back to her side of the table. I looked at the correction and thought about the way she'd said that, two of us. Not as a concession, not as a negotiated settlement, but as a simple statement about the arrangement, and something in my chest confirmed what quality control had been misclassifying for 3 years. On day 7, we ordered dinner for the second time. The first time we'd ordered from different places, which in retrospect said something about where we still were. The second time, she asked without looking up from her laptop whether I wanted anything from the Thai place, and I said yes, same as last time, and she ordered for both of us like it was something she did. I noticed. I filed it. On day 9, it rained, the kind of London rain that makes the whole city turn interior. She was at the window at some point past 10, her tea in both hands, watching the street below. I had finished a section and was allowing myself the indulgence of not pretending to type for a few minutes. I said, "You're quiet." She said, "I'm thinking." I said, "About the brief?" She said, "Not really." I didn't ask what about. I was getting better, 3 years in, at knowing which questions she wanted asked, and which she was working out alone. She came back to the table after a while and picked up where she'd left off without explanation, and I went back to mine. And we worked in the comfortable, close silence of two people who have spent enough evenings together that silence has stopped feeling like something to fill. Comfortable. That was the word that caught me. When had this become comfortable? On day 10, near midnight, she fell asleep at the table. Not dramatically, just her chin dipping, twice, then her head going down onto her folded arms. The kind of sleep that catches you mid-sentence in your own thoughts. I looked at her for a moment. The ceramic cactus she'd brought from her desk was at the corner of the table. Her red hair had come down. Her laptop was still open and lit. I closed the laptop. Carefully. Then I sat back down and finished the section I was on. I did not examine why I'd come back to close it. I had started toward the door, I know, because I remember the sound of my jacket being lifted from the chair, and then I'd come back. Without deciding to. The way you do things, your body has already settled. She slept for about 40 minutes. When she woke, too fast, blinking, immediately gathering herself, she looked at the closed laptop, and then at me. "You closed it," she said. "It was getting warm." She held that for a moment. The look she was giving me was not the evaluation look, not the one I'd been cataloging as professional assessment for 3 years. It was something else. Something that had probably always been underneath it, and that I was only now, in an empty office at midnight with the rain still going, allowing myself to read correctly. She said, quietly, "Thank you." I said, "Get some coffee." "We've got another hour." She got some coffee. We finished. She left at 2, and I left at 2:15, and I walked out into the empty night street and stood on the pavement for a moment, thinking about 40 minutes of not interrupting something that didn't need interrupting, and what that was, and what I was going to do about what that was. I went home. I did not sleep particularly well. The next morning I found the note. I lied. "I don't hate you." I sat with it for long enough that my coffee went cold. Then I picked up my phone. I typed, I know. Then I deleted it. I typed, I know, and I lied too. Then I deleted that. I typed, come get coffee with me before the debrief. I sent that one. She replied in 4 minutes, yes. We didn't go to the office coffee machine. We went to the place 2 streets over that she always went to when she needed to think outside the building. The one she'd mentioned once in passing, and that I had filed away without examining why I was filing it. We got the same order, Americano, no milk, which we had apparently both been ordering for 3 years without ever being in the same coffee queue, and we sat at the window table. She had the Post-it in her jacket pocket. I knew because she put it on the table between us, face up, before she said anything. I've been telling myself it was rivalry, she said, for 3 years. That what I felt when you got something right was professional frustration. That the extra hour I put into pitches when I knew you were pitching was about the work. That when I looked up at that bar a year ago and found you without looking for you, that was just habit, proximity. I've been telling myself the same things, I said. All of them? All of them. Longer versions, same conclusions. I looked at her. For how long? She turned her coffee cup. The whiteboard, she said. 2nd week. You said nice framework and I said I know, and I spent the drive home thinking about that for longer than made sense. That's earlier than I thought. You were oblivious, she said, not unkindly. I was filing things wrong. You were. She paused. So was I, for a while. It was easier. I said, I came back for the laptop. She looked at me steadily. I was at the door, I said. I heard you breathing. You were asleep. I could hear it, and I turned around and came back. Not because the laptop was getting warm. Because I stopped. Because, she said, because I wasn't ready to leave the room yet. She held that for a moment. Outside, the city continued. A morning bus, a delivery van, someone walking fast in the rain. I wrote the note, she said, at 2 in the morning after I got home. I wrote it 3 times. The first 2 versions were longer. Then I thought, 4 words is enough. Either he knows what they mean or he doesn't. She looked at me. You knew. I knew. She reached across the table, not to shake hands, past that, through that, the way you reach for something you've decided to reach for. I put my hand in hers. It was easy. That was the thing that got me, how easy it was. 3 years of professional friction and careful positioning, and every available substitute for the actual thing, and the actual thing was just easy. Like an argument you've been having that stops when someone finally says what they meant. We were late to the debrief. Our creative director looked at us once across the conference table with an expression that suggested he found this outcome both unsurprising and beneath comment, and he moved on. The Ashford deck was good. The room leaned forward. She had been right about the positioning line. She usually was, which I had stopped finding irritating and started finding useful, which is its own kind of arrival. 2 months later, the ceramic cactus appeared on my desk, not moved there, placed deliberately, facing my monitor. I texted her from 3 desks away. Is this a territorial marker? She texted back, it's on your side now. That means it's yours to look after. I texted, that's a lot of responsibility for a plant that doesn't require water. She texted, you'll figure it out. I did, in the end, figure it out. I watered it once by accident. She pointed out that succulents don't require water and overwatering is how they die, which was a correction delivered with the specific flatness she reserved for things that were too obvious to be worth volume. The cactus survived. It has survived everything since. A year after that, she was presenting to a new client, a big pitch. 8 people in the room. Significant stakes. And I was there because we were on the same team now in every sense. Had been for a while. Midway through her presentation, she glanced across the table at me. Not performing it. Just a quick look. The kind that asks a question without words. I gave her the small nod that meant, yes, keep going, you've got them. She turned back and kept going. She did have them. Afterward, in the corridor, she said, "You always do that." I said, "What?" She said, "The nod. You always know exactly when." I said, 3 years of watching you present. You give the same tell when you're about to push harder and you're not sure whether the room can take it. She considered this. Competitive awareness, she said. I said, something like that. She shook her head, but the real smile was there, the one she didn't deploy easily, the one that was better for it, and she went back to the office, and so did I, and the cactus was still on my desk, as it had been for a year, having survived another reshuffle. Some things earn their place and stay. Years later, when people asked how we got together, I told the Post-it version. She told the whiteboard version. You said nice framework, and I said I know. She'd always say. And that was when I knew. Because people don't say I know like that unless they mean something else by it. I said I hadn't known at the whiteboard. She said she knew. I said I'd arrived at it through a longer process. She said I'd been oblivious for approximately 30 months, and she'd been patient with that on purpose. I said that sounded like competitive awareness. She said it was. She'd been playing a longer game and she'd won. I told her the note had 4 words. She said 4 was enough. I said I'd needed every one of them. It wasn't new. It had probably always been her. It had just taken both of us 11 days in an empty office, and one night I came back for the wrong reason, and finally the right one, to stop calling it something else. Have you ever mistaken a feeling for something safer, rivalry, friction, competition, and only recognized what it actually was when you ran out of other words for it? And have you ever had someone leave you 4 words that changed everything you thought you knew? Tell me your story in the comments. If you liked this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.